Hello and welcome to the Southwestern Career Connection podcast, focused on helping you find your future, your passion at Southwestern Community College. Hosted by Mike Despo, our Director of Career Services. Today's episode features 2015 SCC graduate Gabrielle Beam Hyatt, who's now working for Heights of Jackson County. And now, here's your host, Mike Despo.
Gabby, welcome back to SCC. Going great. Welcome back again. I'm really excited to have you here today. I got to just stop before we talk about any content and just say we have a lot of kind of interesting overlap, right? Like I think my wife taught you at Western, but when I came over here in 2015, because I was at Western for some years, and then I came over to SCC to help launch Peak that we'll talk about later, and do career development stuff for students here. You were a legend. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Well, first of all, your face was on billboards. You're going to tell me how that happened, right? Yeah. and you were part of our branding, and part of that is just something. And what's interesting to me is you're not a self-promoter. I mean, you're a pretty humble person. You were a really great student, and then you became a really great educator. Really, you leveraged SCC to do some pretty neat things. But when I came over here, my wife, who taught you, said, "You're going to get to work with Gabby." And I said, "Yeah, I think so." I heard her pictures everywhere. And then later, we even used your picture to brand this initiative, Peak. Yeah, I know, I'm embarrassing you. So what was that like to drive around county and Jackson County, Macon County, and Swain County and see your picture on board?
It was shocking at first, and just like, oh no, but then I was like, Mom, like, you'll never believe it. And then there were a couple of teachers that were like, "Are you the girl on the billboard?" I was like, "Oh no, that's my twin sister. That's definitely not me." So there was a little bit of both. Like, definitely pride for SCC and appreciative for all the opportunities, but also.
Well, you were a poster woman, still are, for SCC. I still use you in this promotion for career services stuff. But there's a reason for that, and you've got a lot to say, and I think the message you had is real powerful. And for our listeners, I don't think they know, but you came back in April, and you were on a panel for students in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, and so really liked what you had to say about your experiences here. I guess, I just start. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your journey through SCC?
So I came to SCC like first generation. Didn't really understand. I come from a bilingual household, mixed family, so I didn't understand the college experience at all. And I came in also being homeschooled, so just like the first time really in a school setting, and I was petrified of the entire experience, and I was very fortunate that the way that things fell my orientation day, that I walked through student support services, and they were just like, "We'll help you." And I feel like without those supports, I just don't think I would have been able to make it, just because I didn't have the information or the knowledge of how things work, like the process of school. And I was very fortunate that they continued to support me. And as I went through classes, and I did okay in classes with all of their support, and they were like, "You need to tutor this class, and you're going to do this." And there wasn't a lot of options with that, which I appreciate as a little introvert, them being like, no, you can do it. And it just continued to open doors from tutoring to being a learning consultant to working in the advising center, the transfer advising center. So it just kind of all snowballed, and then I ended up teaching a class here after I graduated from Western.
Wow. So you went from receiving services and support to providing it to others.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty big success story. Now let me ask you a question. You're going to laugh. So my wife likes to say about mathematics, she says, math is a degree in being smart. You can sell it anywhere for anything. Why math for you?
I think math, we like numbers, but the numbers aren't the biggest thing, it's the problem solving. And I think that's super transferable. So for me, I enjoy the numbers, I enjoy the puzzles, I enjoy not having a lot of information and then trying to find little pieces and then coming up with a solution. So I don't even know if I like mathematics, but I enjoy the problem solving and like kind of the game and the fight with that.
You don't need to be a mathematician to benefit from math.
No, I don't
Yeah,
think so.
I think you're right. Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of people get paranoid or fearful of mathematics, but I like how you kind of reduced it to problem solving. And, you know, we talk about core skills, employability skills, soft skills. And there are things like complex problem solving, communication skills, leadership skills, time management skills, things like that. And it sounds like that your course of study gave you that.
Yes, most definitely, yeah.
You think the same thing's true for other general education courses?
I think so. I think there's like grains of things in everything. So you can go through the whole entire college process and get a surface level and kind of go through the motions, or you can dig deep and like find the skills that are transferable and that you can use in multiple spaces. And it's not just a literal box. It's like reading a book. You can read a book and be like, oh, it was a book. But if you like dig deeper into it, you're like, oh, it means something.
You know, there's something you can bring, you can take from every kind of class. There's no such thing as a class that is useless in the future. So, you know, that's you know, the vernacular. You know. But that's true about our general education. It really sets people up for success. How did it kind of work for you to study as a college transfer student here and then go to a four-year university?
For me, I did not know what I wanted to do when I first came here, so I just took the general ed classes to see what I was interested in.
Yeah.
So I started out as a sociology major. Actually, I didn't do anything with math, and then I ended up taking a couple of math classes with Vance Wagner,
Yeah.
and then I fell in love with it, and then when I went to Western, kind of like made my little plan from that. But I think it just helped me like broaden my scope of like other things, like, oh, I definitely don't want to do anything in science. That's fun, but it's going to stay over there.
Yeah.
Or like, I really like the people aspect of sociology and I want to learn more about that. And
You know, and there's people don't realize that there are connections there to social sciences like sociology and political science and anthropology and other things. They use a lot of applied statistics. So.
Yep.
So you were getting a foundation no matter what direction. You kept
Correct.
doors open, didn't you? You
Yep.
could have done anything leaving here. That's great. Can you talk about a class that really made a difference for you?
I think probably one of the most influential classes was my my Math 171 class. That was like my first like big girl math class.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult, very challenging, but I loved it, and I found a group of people in like a study group, and I think that was my first experience of actually like having that community approach to education, you know, like a group of people, and we're gonna go study here, and we're gonna come to the library and like work on these things, and it opened my eyes to the college experience and what I could do. And then when I was finished with that class, I think I mentioned it at the panel, whenever we did that in April, and I thought I'd failed the final. I was like, oh, he's never gonna,
Crisis,
it's so
I'm
terrible.
never gonna go to
It's,
college.
no, I know, it's like all the catastrophizing, and he like, Mr. Wagner like yelled at me as I was leaving the classroom. He's like, hey, come here. I was like, oh my gosh, like I failed. He's gonna, in front of everybody, it's a whole thing, I'm gonna die. And he was just like, I want you to tutor this class, and I'm gonna talk to Lori about it. And I was like, oh, that is the opposite of where my brain was going with this information. And he was persistent, again, like the persistent people at SEC who were like, nope, you're gonna do this, and I'm gonna talk to this person. And then Lori called me, and that was my first tutoring experience, and I've tutored for, you know, the next 8 years, like, and that was the kind of linchpin in me actually doing it. And that was
How incredibly
really cool.
validating.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw yourself in a whole different light after
Yep.
that.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I can
An
help
epiphany
people.
experience, a turning point.
Yeah.
We call those turning points.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a friend of mine who is a faculty member, went on to be a dean somewhere. He was in the news, and I absorbed this stuff because it gets posted. And I kind of caught a quote from him. He said that, Skibbs Knox, he used to live here in Silva. He said that, you know, the difference between high school and college. In high school, we consume information and knowledge. And in college, we become producers of it, really, and you become even a communicator of it in your role as an educator.
I like
Yeah.
that a lot.
So your growth curve continues to be pretty steep. I mean, you're doing some pretty cool work in the community right now, aren't you?
For a couple of years, I worked in the alternative school, Jackson Community School, working with alternative clients, students, as a tutor, and kind of bouncing around. And I did some crisis intervention while I worked there, and found that I really enjoyed the combination of being able to help on that like much more level, deeper level of mental health. And one of the organizations that lives inside that school, called Heights,
Yeah.
They asked me to come help them and work with them, and now I'm working with them more as like a qualified mental health professional, but I'm also like, I get to work with their spreadsheets and problem solving and all their
There's
data
that,
and reports,
right.
right? So I'm still doing all of my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So I'll get to actually work with you as a colleague now, because I'm sure I'll see you with Heights students from the area schools. Gosh, at our fall career fair, I think it's looking like that's going to be March 12th in Macon County. At our health fair here, we'll have some career development components. That's exciting. I'll tell you all that soon.
Yeah, definitely.
We got some neat plans coming in for that. We don't have a date yet for it. It'll probably be in September.
Okay.
And then the big career events will be in the spring. Heights just brought so much energy there.
I think there's a lot of love. I think everybody that works for Heights has that common goal of like, the self is out of the picture, and like I do this for the kids, and like for them to have opportunities that like maybe I didn't or other people wouldn't, and that is so apparent in the way that like everybody shows up.
It's a great partner for SCC, because these organizations, your nonprofit and our college, I think, do so much for the community. And I think that's the answer too for why your picture's on everything. Because you're not a self-promoter, you're a giver, and we're proud of you. And I think that SCC thrives because we're kind of a community of givers here too. So we're connected to our public. Thanks for making a difference just by being you. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think my biggest thing is that like I came to college like completely like unaware and not knowing what to expect, and I really had to lean into the process and trust the people, and kind of accept that I didn't understand what was happening, and that was extremely scary. But whenever I gave into that, then I was flooded with support, and then wanting to give that back, especially as a transfer advisor. I'd have the kids that would come in and just like with schedules and like I can't and I don't know how to get my state, blah blah, and it was really cool to be able to be like, I get it, like it's super scary. And that I think that level of empathy of like, it's okay, you can be scared and you can still make it. Take a deep breath and then start eating it piece by piece. So I think anything I could say to any student coming or faculty is just like love deep and like lean into it.
Love deep, lean into it. Well, Gabby, that moment of epiphany you had in that class before everything changed and you became a tutor and an educator and a difference maker. I'm gonna send this video clip to people around SCC, and that is going to be their moment of validation. See you say these things. So, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, I gotta shake your hand. All right.